This episode is brought to you by LaFosse Academy, a program dedicated to helping people from diverse backgrounds break into the tech industry. They don't just train you with the skills you need, they help you to land your first role, give you real-world experience and a strong foundation to launch your career in tech. For businesses, the Academy offers a way to build diverse, future-ready teams while creating opportunities for talented individuals who might not have had a traditional route into tech. So, whether you're looking to start a career in tech or you're a business leader ready to build a stronger, more diverse team, speak to LaFosse Academy and take the next step. At Elevate Colour, we're proud to share their mission to level the playing field and create a tech workforce that truly reflects society. Welcome back to Race to the Top with me, Oki Lazu. In today's episode, I'll be talking to Sim Sanni, who's an independent advisor at John Lewis, or the John Lewis Partnership, and was one of their very first black female store managers. We discuss the implications of that, as well as her growing up living between London and Nigeria, the weight of being a role model, and how having the same colour skin as the majority doesn't necessarily mean that you feel like you belong. I found the conversation incredibly enlightening and inspiring, and I hope you do too. Let's get into it. So, welcome, Sim.
Hello, thank you.
I was going to say, I said to you, Olusimbu. It's not Simbo when you're in trouble with mum, but you said it's just Simbo.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Simbo.
With an accent.
You know, yeah. You got to do it in the full accent. I never do that with when I'm thinking about my mum, but I hear it.
Yes.
Like I always hear it. You know, like my name's Oki, but Okechuku means I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
You know, like
Get that.
proper trouble. So, welcome. If we start at the beginning, we were just sort of discussing before we started doing this, you growing up in London, but you kind of had this really interesting experience of growing up between London and Nigeria. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. What I would say is my parents were immigrants and came to the UK and had me here.
Do you know what year was that, out of interest?
They came to the UK 1977, I believe.
Okay.
Because I was conceived not long after.
TMI, let's keep going.
To be really honest, I didn't live with them when I was growing up. We were privately fostered through their arrangements. That's what lots of Nigerian parents did when they came over. It enabled them to work full time, and I came home and lived with my parents, kind of holidays, weekends, etc., etc.
So that's not like a boarding. That's living with another
family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In London?
No, that was actually in Kent.
Oh, right, okay.
In Kent, so
and your parents were in
London.
In London as well? Oh,
Yeah.
Right, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's quite a distance.
Kind of, sort of like a boarding school, but not really.
Yeah, definitely.
You know.
So.
And how was that?
I guess at the time it felt okay. I guess now I've got my own children. It's not something that I would do, but I understand the situation in which they felt that was the best option for them at that point in time. And as I say, lots of African parents, families did that at that point in time. So at the time I didn't know any different.
Yeah.
And then when I was about 8, my parents decided that they thought that Nigeria would be far better than they left it. So we actually relocated from the UK to Nigeria. And me and my sister.
Lock, stock and barrel, just everything.
Everything
gone,
gone straight over. So me and my 2 siblings at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a private school in Nigeria where you spoke English at school.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to school speaking English. I came home speaking English. Everyone around me spoke Yoruba, but I still spoke English. So I learned how to understand what people were saying to me, but I was never really encouraged to actually speak my language. And I think about 6 months in, my parents thought it's probably not as good as they thought it was going to be in Nigeria. So my mum and my brother actually came back to the UK, and my mum had to work for another year to save enough money for us to relocate back over.
Right.
And so we were there for about 2 years, and then we came back when I was 10, and then I was back living with my parents from then onwards.
All right. So it's quite multi-dimensional then. So you start of your life is here, but sort of seeing your parents at the weekends, then you go back to Nigeria full time, see your parents, and you come back and you're then with them full time.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you think that's affected the person you've become?
So quite a few different ways. I I was really close to my dad growing up, and I think that probably stems from when my mum came back to work and earned the money, we stayed with our dad in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So I have always felt really comfortable being really open with my dad versus my mum.
Okay.
Since having my own children, I've got lots of friends whose children went off to independent schools and boarding schools for secondary school education. And I was really adamant that I didn't want my children to ever grow up and live away from me. I really wanted to create a real sense of bond that they could come to me with anything and that I was there for them. And so actually, I really didn't even consider them ever living away from me. My thing was I'm always going to keep them with me. And that's kind of helped me with some of my choices that I had to make when I was thinking about secondary schools for my children.
And do you think it's made you a more resilient person? I mean, often when we speak to people on the podcast who've been through lots of different changes in their, in their formative years, there's this whole element that they are prepared for all sorts of eventualities, i.e. more resilient going on in their life. Do you think that's been a factor or not?
I wouldn't say so. If I think, because there's 5 of us as siblings and we're all very different, very similar experiences, but very different. But what I would say is being a first child, from an African parents, I definitely felt the responsibility to always have to be a role model.
Yeah.
So I knew that I had to lead the way in terms of going to university, getting a degree, getting on the ladder, marrying, trying to make the right choice with who I marry.
That's a
whole another conversation.
That's our burden we all have to bear, right?
But yeah, I always felt not pressurized, but I always felt the pressure to really think about my choices because I felt it was going to potentially cement the way for my siblings behind me.
Yeah. And how about the whole idea of being in minority and majority? So, in your early formative years, you're here as an ethnic minority, and then you live in Nigeria where you're in the majority again, and it's back. Then you're back here and it's the minority. Not many people get to experience that. They grow up. Some would say me, and I'm always in the ethnic minority. I never lived in an area where I've been the part of the majority. What was that like? And do you think that's had any influence how you think about race and how it works?
So I guess if I've got to be really candid, I think in all those situations that you described, living in Kent, living in Nigeria, being back in the UK, I was always in the minority. So whilst in Nigeria, whilst I physically am the same skin colour as the majority of people around me, I sound very different.
Yeah.
I've got an accent. I can't speak the language. I don't fully understand the culture because I didn't live with my parents full time when I was younger. So I've learnt to, I guess, live in a world where I've always been a minority for some shape or form, and have had to learn the skills to be able to face into them and overcome them, and not let that be a distraction or a barrier to whatever it is I want to do and what how I see life, so to speak.
So that's super interesting, isn't it? So we always think of, or we have this sort of framing that minority majority in race is about the colour of your skin or your ethnicity, and what you're saying is you can actually be. You look the same as everyone else, but feel still like an outsider.
Absolutely. I got married to a gentleman who was born in Nigeria, raised in Nigeria, could speak Yoruba, had the accent and everything. And therefore I have a really big friendship group of Nigerian, amazing people born in Nigeria, all have accents, all have great careers over here. But sometimes when we get together, everybody's speaking Yoruba.
Yeah.
Having a really good conversation, really good dialogue, really good jokes. And they do genuinely work really hard to either translate or bring me in and ask me, do I understand, so I don't feel left out. But it can be really difficult when there's lots of people speaking a language that you can understand if one person's speaking it to you. But when there's lots of people, it's really difficult because I have to translate it into English to understand what they're saying and then be able to respond back in English.
Yeah.
And like I say, nobody does anything deliberately to make me feel excluded, but I definitely feel, and I've had these conversations with these guys, I definitely feel, I'm definitely quite conscious that I stand out and I'm different, even in places where I may look physically the same as someone else.
Yeah. I mean, it really gets down to the nuts and bolts of belonging, doesn't it? In that, I had the same, when I used to go and visit family in Nigeria, even though I've been brought up here the whole time, I could safely say I felt more like I belonged in London than I did in Lagos.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Even though physically, skin colour, that sounds ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
But 100%, I felt like I belonged in a place where I looked completely different to everyone else.
Definitely.
But that's where I'm from.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think people can get upset when they say, "Where are you from?" And you say, "I'm from London." And you go, "Oh, they're not from London." You go, "I am.
Yeah.
This is where I'm from, and it's where I belong." And it's
Absolutely.
really interesting how that belonging sense is so much wider and bigger than what people perceive it to be.
No, I agree. My mum will talk to me regularly around, she's currently in Nigeria. She's retired. She spends a lot of her time in Nigeria. She talks to me a lot about visiting and coming over. And I'm like, no, I don't need to come and visit. I can send you a ticket. You can come and see us over here, but it's much easier. I don't feel as though I belong in Nigeria. It's not it's the last time I went was, my son's 17, so the last time I went was nearly 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I remember being in Nigeria, and as they do over there, police stopped us and they said something, and I said one thing, and he said in Yoruba, "What is she speaking? Is she French or something?"
Yeah.
So straight away, people will listen to what I have to say, and you already feel like, oh my God, I really don't belong here. And that belonging is all about how you feel. How safe and comfortable do I feel in a particular room, space, area, environment? So it's beyond and it's broader than just physically what we look like.
Yeah. No, I think that's super interesting. So how did that sort of go at school? So obviously you went to different schools, but let's focus on you being back here and at school. How was it growing up in a school where you're in the minority? You always, as you said, you've always been in the sort of minority, but back here schooling, what was that like?
Well, I went to school in East London, so actually, from my recollection, it was really mixed.
Right.
Actually, if I think about my friendship groups and lots of the people I went to school with, I'm still really good friends with now. Loads of them were black. Loads of them were white, loads of them were Asian.
Yeah.
So because it was East London and it was very mixed, actually, there was less conversation, if I'm honest. I don't remember in school the conversation about race ever being an issue or ever coming up in the way it does for my children and in their schooling as it occurs, today.
Is that conversations for them or conversations for you as a parent?
Conversations that they have to have in schools with other people based on comments that are said to them.
Okay.
I don't recall ever experiencing any of that in my secondary school education. I then went to college, where it was still fairly mixed, but a bit more in the minority. Again, I think because of my journey, again, I didn't feel fazed by going to a college that was predominantly white people actually at the time.
Yeah.
And then I went off to university. And again, I think what I learned to do was, it was because of all the differences that I always faced in circles. It was never necessarily about fitting in with people who necessarily look like me, but it was more about a sense of belonging and how well does the way I behave and my values and beliefs align with my friendship group. So I'm pretty principled. I'm pretty clear about where my moral line and my moral compass sits, and so therefore I guess I seek out those who fit along the boundaries of what I think is okay.
Yeah.
Versus more, you look like me and therefore I'm going to align with you.
Yeah. So people often talk about finding your tribe, right?
Yeah.
And the tribe isn't a colour-based tribe.
No.
It's actually more who's like me, who shares my values and stuff. And actually, it's one of those things that's really interesting with the push towards creating in the workplace. We can get to these sort of employee resource groups where they group people together. And I've always felt, well, hang on, just because they look the same as me doesn't mean they are the same as me, right? And my tribe might be someone completely different, right? And actually, mostly normally is, because of upbringing and all of that sort of thing. So that's kind of where you focus, really, just finding people who are like-minded.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, interesting. And the education system worked for you. Well, it sounds like it did.
Yes. So when I schooled in Nigeria, the thing about, I don't know what it's like now, but back then it's all about your ability. So if you were able to achieve and aspire in school, they'd really push you on.
Yeah.
And if you wasn't, then you'd stay back a year, for example. So you could be younger and progress really quickly if you were really clever. And I do remember coming back to the UK and being really advanced in maths.
Mm-hmm.
That was my thing. And if I'm honest, I sometimes feel a little bit failed by the education system, because I remember coming back, the maths was so easy for me. And rather than really trying to propel me on, they almost held my ability.
Yeah.
So I didn't really get much extras to do till everyone else caught up at year 9.
Yeah.
And so by the time you start year 10, kind of your GCSEs, everyone's back at the base level. And looking back, I always think, I wish somebody had said, she's really capable, let's really drive her on. And that was one of the reasons why I studied accountancy, because I was pretty good with numbers. But by the end of doing my degree, I was pretty bored by it and pretty turned off by it all, which is a real shame. But there is something about when I think if you recognise a talent or a skill or an advancement in somebody, I think we should be doing our absolute utmost to really help them drive that forward and really propel them, because you never know the opportunities that can come just by helping people to really navigate that skill set, as opposed to trying to level them out so they're like everybody else.
Yeah, that's right. And almost it has to be almost self-driven, really, hasn't it? Because you can't rely on someone else noticing your skills, your talent, and then doing. Now that happens, right? But that's more luck than design.
Absolutely.
The only thing you can rely on, especially these days with the access to resources and courses, is yourself.
Yeah, I think it's really different now with me as a parent versus my parents. I'm one of 5. My parents had really low income jobs. They had to do what they could do to put food on the table, pay the rent. There was no talk of holidays, no talk of branded gear. It was just to see us through almost.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's really different for my children. And I almost try, me and my siblings try really hard to bring to life, with my children, how things were when we were growing up versus the realities of life today. And the fact that I do work really hard to really provide them, not just the academics, but those extra curriculum stuff. So that if they want to go off and try something different and beyond and be really creative or really driven in another field, they've got the scope to do so and give it a go and try. But my parents couldn't afford to offer or do any of that, for me or for my siblings when we were growing up. So I'm very conscious around the opportunities that I'm able to afford for my children and how to really leverage that. And then I think I always feel about paying it forward. So I talk to my kids around. I feel very privileged and very blessed that I've got a really great siblings. I'm well supported by great friendships. I'm very well supported in the main in my working careers, and I've met some really brilliant people along the way who have really given me the tools that I need to be able to flourish and be my best version of myself. But I'll give you a really good example. When I joined the John Lewis Partnership nearly 22 years ago, I remember saying to my mum, I've got a job with John Lewis Partnership. I start whenever. And my mum's advice to me at that point in time was, brilliant, keep your head down and don't say a word and you'll be fine. And I think for my first 3 to 6 months, I think I followed her advice and kept my head down and didn't say anything. And then I remember somebody said something in a meeting and I spoke up for myself. And I remember my boss at the time kept pulling me aside and saying, well done for speaking up. And I realised then that I needed to use my voice.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think your mum gave you that advice?
Because of what she had experienced when she had come over and what she had experienced in her career and in the places of work that she had chosen to do. It was a bit about survival, I think, for my parents. They'd face. I remember my dad talked about all the racism that he had faced when coming over here, and they were really concerned about where we went and what we did, so that we didn't find ourselves in situations where people would say stuff to us. And so for them, their bit of advice to be protected, for me to be protected was keep your head down, work really hard and say nothing. Whereas actually I'm the opposite with my children. My bit is if you see something wrong, you speak up and you speak out. But you do it in a way that people take notice. So, I say to my daughter, who has probably faced actually more backlog, more backlash due to her colour than my son, is if something happens in the classroom where someone says something to you that's inappropriate, don't cry, put your hand up. And when your teacher says, what is it? Then you say exactly what's happened and say, you don't appreciate it. That's not what you come to school for. And then leave it in their matter, leave it in their hands. Try not to get upset, try not to do the he said, she said. Mm-hmm. Just be really factual, because people listen to you when you're really factual. But when you're really emotional, people try and, you're just emotional. It wouldn't really happen that way. People can try and demean it. Whereas if you speak with fact, very hard for people to argue with the fact of the matter. So she's very good at speaking up and calling people out and not letting things go. My son, I think my son would hold a lot more than what she does.
So it's quite interesting, because we all get told different things by our parents on the basis of their experience. And so therefore we do the same ourselves. Yeah. And you're not necessarily right or wrong, right? Yeah. So your mum might have been right right, in some instances, that the easiest thing to do is say nothing.
Yeah.
Right? It's a bit like being in TV shows. Just float, don't get yourself in any trouble to start with. And so it's not saying that was necessarily the wrong advice. It just necessarily didn't work for you the whole way through what you were doing.
No. And what I did learn what I have learned through my career is I've learned to pick my moments.
Mm-hmm.
There are crucial moments in time when I do have to speak up, and I have to say it because no one else in the room is going to say it. That could well be due to my lived experiences, being maybe the only ethnic person in the room, being somebody who is coming from a different perspective. So I have to speak up and use my voice.
Yeah.
And then there are other times when I let things go over my head because it just isn't worth the battle, and it's not a big deal, and nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change from that. And I've also learned to think about how I say it. So, we've all, I guess, as we grow up, learn bits about ourselves. But I've learned to, if I'm annoyed or angry, I won't say a word because it would never come out in the right way. So I'm really balanced. I watch my tone of voice. I watch my facial expressions. I'm dark-skinned.
Yeah.
And that potential bias that occurs when you are dark-skinned, when you're, pretty straight-talking, I have at times been labelled aggressive because of how I've come across. And so I don't want that label because I'm not aggressive, but I am assertive. So therefore I've really had to watch and learn different ways to pitch myself so that people sit up, take notice and respond to what I'm saying in the way that I need them to respond to it.
So let's go there. I think this is a super interesting element. I think, intersectionality-wise, being a black woman, right, in the workplace, we'll cover the workplace a bit more, but I'm really interested in your view on the stereotypes.
Yeah.
So if you say, I'm going to speak up and say my thing, that there's a stereotype out there that says black women are aggressive.
Yeah.
Right? I know, look, 'cause my mum and I've got a sister, and my sister speaks out, and people say she's aggressive, right? Sometimes when she's just speaking the truth.
Yeah.
So how do you navigate against that very clear stereotype? It so totally exists.
Yeah.
When you are assertive, right? So how have you made that work?
So, I've got a long tenure in the John Lewis partnership, which means I've built really great relationships with the majority of people that I've come across and led in my career. And relationships come first.
Mm-hmm.
So, the reason why I've stayed in the partnership for so long and had a really great fulfilling career is because the values and beliefs about how we treat each other have always held true for me.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, if there's ever been a time or a moment when that hasn't been where I thought it should be, because of our values and our beliefs of our organisational fit, it's given me the room to speak up and speak out. But it is about timing, i.e. picking my moments.
How?
Mm.
If anyone's out there who's going to listen to this as young females, any female or women, and of colour, facing this, how do you get the timing right?
Do you know what? You've got to judge the situation. Sometimes you could be in a group setting, and if it's one person that you need to speak up to, you may be better placed picking up with them on a one-to-one basis separately. If there is a group discussion or a group debate happening, there is something about how when you interject, you might, really think about the words you use, really think about your tone of voice, and really think about your facial expressions.
Okay.
I'm naturally really happy and really smiley. Naturally.
So it would seem.
Naturally.
Yeah.
That can be hard to maintain when something is rubbing you up the wrong way. But I guess I have to work really hard to hold that mask at times, because when I'm not so smiley, I don't want to play into anyone's potential bias. So I won't allow anyone the satisfaction of holding a potential bias over me.
Yeah.
And therefore, how I come across and how I'm perceived and how people receive me is really important to me, my personal brand, my personal reputation, and that belief in what I stand for and that doing right. And I also think with the role that I do in the partnership and the level that, with what I've achieved, the level that I am, I'm a role model.
Yeah.
I'm a role model too, people from an ethnic, from a minority ethnic background. I'm a role model being female. I'm a role model being a mum.
Yeah.
So I think when you're a role model, you have a greater responsibility on you to think about the greater good. And so it's less about me and my personal emotions and churn of how I feel, but I'm really dead set on, I'm going to pave the way for others. I'm going to help others really think about how they position themselves in order to continue to reduce and mitigate the potential biases that you can walk into if you're not careful.
Yeah.
So if somebody's got potential bias about me, black people, an ethnic minority person, the last thing you want to do is play to that. Actually, you want to work really hard to showcase something really different, to minimise their bias and for them to really think and reflect that actually that person isn't how I thought they were going to be, or how they actually truly are. I'm just a bit clouded by my own personal views and maybe some past experiences that I've faced with certain people.
That sounds exhausting, right?
It is exhausting.
I mean, basically what you just described then is having to think about what you look like, how you sound, how you react, the tone of voice, the being a role model and standing up for all those different groups that you've just talked about. That's a lot to think about. It must be an exhausting way to live your life, or certainly your work career, having to juggle all this stuff in your head.
It is without a doubt, but it's got easier over the years. So the current role I do, I don't actually line manage anybody. But prior to that, so for 18 years, I've always had to line manage teams, and you make your mistakes and you learn from them as you go, right? So I suspect in my early days, when I first started to lead large teams of people, I'm sure I made loads of mistakes in the way that I responded to people, in the way that I showed up, in the way that I maybe just responded in the moment. And what you do is you take the feedback that you receive, you reflect upon it, and you think about whether it's true or not for you, and actually how do you want to be different next time. The one big bit of feedback that I remember getting was I'm a real high achiever. I set my sights really high, and I set that climb for everyone else around me. So if you are a real high achieving person who really wants to excel and achieve, you'll love working for me because I'll get you there. Sometimes though, there are people who will be doing their very best, but will feel as if they can never do enough from someone like me because of how high achieving I am.
Yeah.
And what I remember...
It's high achieving, high expectations.
Say again?
High expectations? Okay.
Probably a bit of both, to be fair.
You get the first to get the second.
Absolutely. Okay. And I remember the branch manager at the time saying to me, I don't know if you're aware, but some people are scared of you. And I said, why would they be scared of me? I thought I had a really great relationship with my team. Why would they be scared of me? And he was very good. He said, you've got really high expectations, real high achievement orientation. But sometimes some of those people who are struggling to reach that will be quite fearful of working for you.
Yeah.
And I burst into tears. We was on the shop. I can still remember it today. We was on the shop floor, and I burst into tears because I was so upset that I had made anybody feel this way, because that was never my intention. He, I think, was surprised that I burst into tears, because I don't think he realised I was unaware of how I was making a small percentage of people, but equally, I was making some people feel that particular way. Well, I had to take it, I didn't ever want to be somebody that people were afraid to work for. I'm unafraid to face into poor performance or to drive greater performance, but equally your people's well-being, people's work-life balance, I will always do my very best for you, because I know that if I do my very best for you, you're absolutely going to do the very best for me and the team. So for me, it's a united front. But what that moment did was really make me think about how I showed up for some of those individuals who wasn't necessarily some of my top performers, and made me really think about how I got a better balance and how I responded to them. I think around the same time, I also had a baby, my first child. And so I think hand in hand, it made me probably start to think about at what points can I do things a little bit differently?
Yep.
What will be my impact? And I always thought about what would be my legacy. So I moved around shops in London quite frequently. So as I leave a shop, what do I want my legacy to be? How do I want people to remember me? What do I want people to say about me once I leave? And so every time I moved, I think, right, this worked really well. I'm going to hold on to these skills and I've got these down. But actually, there's one or two things over here that I still really want to work on. How do I do that and how do I navigate it? And every step you go. So I started off being a section manager in the partnership. I then became a deputy branch manager. I then became a branch manager. I'm now an independent advisor. So every time you take a step up to that next level, you then have to think about how you lead even more differently, because there are different roles and people have different expectations of you.
Yeah.
Also comes with real responsibility to, like I say, to always role model for the people that you're leading and for your customer, to really, show up as the very best. And you are the face of your face of the branch, and you're the face of the brand at that moment in time.
Yeah. I think, God, there's so much to unpack in there about leadership. We'll do all of it. But, excuse me, the reality is, if you have high expectations to achieve well, not everyone can come with you on that journey, right? Yeah. And surely the key thing is, for me, has always been transparency, which is, we're going here, right? It's going to be super hard, but this is where we want to get to. Yeah. And not all of you will be able to get there, but I hope you can, right? And if you're not, let's talk about it, But I suppose those people who have high expectations, the high achievers, they take no prisoners. Generally, they take no prisoners.
So I'm going to build a little bit out on what you just said. So there's something about being really clear of the journey you want to go on. Mm-hmm. There's something about setting a really clear strategy about how you're going to get there and the steps it takes. But there's something about being really honest with people around, where do you see yourself now on this ladder that we need to climb to get to where we want to get to? Where do you see yourself, and where do I see you, and why? So being able to give people really tangible feedback as to the reasons why you've placed them at this point on the ladder, and for them to give you really tangible feedback as to where they place you on the ladder, is the first step. Because once you are both aligned on where you are on the ladder, you can then put things in place to help them climb the ladder with you. And then for me, it either becomes a will or a skill, because those people who really want to come on the journey with you, even if it's slower than the others, I'll walk with you on the journey to get you to where you get to, so we all collectively get there together. Mm-hmm. But some people choose not to follow you on that journey, and at the moment you choose not to follow, your leader on the journey, and you're really upfront about you don't want to follow, then my bit to you is, what do you want to do then? Because this is the journey we've all committed to sign up and go. What is it you need to do? What can I do to help you get to where you want to go on your own journey? And that was the bit for me around taking no prisoners, yes, but doing it in a way that helps people in and out of situations where they want to be in is better than falling off the ladder. Yeah,
no, I think you're right. We might come back to that, because we can do management and leadership. Yeah. But actually, I'm still really interested in a couple of things to do with you and your parents. So keep your head down. Anything else that they told you about how you would need to be or behave in your career to be successful? Did they give you any other things that you're thankful they told you?
I don't think they necessarily told me anything else. I think their mantra was, you've got into a really good, company, make the most of what you've got almost. My parents aren't the sort of parents who say, brilliant, you've done this, but have you ever thought about going X, Y, Z? Because you could do even more over here. I just don't think with their career history and with their transition from Nigeria to the UK, it was in their DNA to think about, how to do the very best. My dad is really clever. He's an engineer, but he never worked in his field. So the jobs that my dad always did, for me, I always feel really bad that he never got to really flourish and thrive in his academic, career progression. And he always said to me, he felt his colour held him back from the roles he could have done. Mm.
But that was in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
And for sure that's probably true.
Yeah, definitely. Whereas I guess I'm from a generation of, if I look around me and my friendship group, so that I've known from school, for example, I think we've all done pretty well in our careers, actually. And lots of their parents are similar to, in mindset to my parents. So there was something about, I think, our generation recognising that we need to work really hard and be pretty driven and go at it. But there was something about, I guess, that stability piece, I guess, is probably something, there's a bit of an undercurrent as to why I've stayed for so long. But equally, though, the John Lewis Partnership is a brilliant company to work for, and lots of people have stayed for a really long time in it as well. So I guess I got lucky with the organisation that I joined. Yeah.
So this work hard thing, I've written it down.
Yeah.
And it's something we talk about a lot on the podcast. smarter. Sometimes because people's parents have told them
Yeah.
you have to work double, triple, quadruple times harder to just achieve the same. You have to come first to come third, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So there was none of that from your parents. Was that something you just recognised for yourself? Or do you not believe it at all?
No, it's definitely there.
Right.
I definitely felt I personally definitely felt the need to work harder. Later on, I learned to work smarter. But at the beginning of my career, I definitely learned to work harder to deliver the results, to not give anyone a reason to say I couldn't do something. My bit was, I'm not going to leave anything to chance.
Yeah.
That's the reason why you don't give me the next opportunity or the next role. I want to be the top dog in any shop or branch that I worked in. I want to be, the number 2 almost. Yeah. And so I'm going to do everything I can do to position myself in that way. And then once I was top dog of my own shop almost.
Yeah.
No one else to go almost in your shop. So then it was about actually how do I work a bit more smarter across the organisation to be impactful and to be influential and to carry it further than just the people that I look after here and the customers that I look after here. What can I do to be really broad about it? And now I'm in a place where, for me now, it's less about working harder, but it is more about recognising the opportunities that I have to do well, to help others do well, to help the organisation do even better.
Okay. So if we think about, so you're a hard worker, you're always a hard worker, you're surrounded, sounds like your friendship group's a hard working group.
Yeah.
So that's good. And you straight into retail, pretty much.
Pretty much. I mean, when I was at university, I had a part-time job, believe it or not, in a betting shop.
Oh, nice. Good with numbers, right?
Good with numbers. I used to have to work out the odds really easily, so it ticked my box. I loved doing it, and great banter with the customer.
There's very little difference between betting shops and trading floors, right? Honestly, there isn't.
Absolutely.
There really isn't.
Absolutely. And when I finished university, accountancy, my mum had said...
You did accountancy at university?
I did accountancy at university. And if I'm honest, it's really interesting because I chose accountancy because I was good with numbers, but I was really bored with the thought of being an accountant by the end of university. And when I look back, I think there's something around my tutors at university didn't really engage with me. I wasn't the sort of student that went up to my tutor lecturer and say, I've done this piece of work, can I have some feedback? What do you think? I just worked hard. That was always my mantra. And I think had I been with my tutor a bit more engaged with them and get them to read over stuff and then they take an interest in me, I may have enjoyed some of my courses more than what I did. But because I feel like there are moments in time where people can have an impact, some of my relationships with some of my tutors, I could read that they didn't think much of me, and therefore I fell out of love with what I thought I wanted to do.
Did you feel there was a racial element to that?
I don't think it was a racial element. I just think they had a view of there were other people in front of me saying, "Show me, let me show you what I'm doing." Yeah. So you give your attention to those people, right? Rather
than the person,
interested. The person in the back who is working hard, but you don't really see that interaction and that engagement. And then when I finished university, I remember my boss at the time saying to me in the bedroom, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't know. I need to go to London and get a job." And she said, "Oh, just come here. And, I'll train you to become a manager." And within 6 weeks, I'd gone from cashier to an assistant manager. And I was out running different betting shops in the area which I went to university. And then I came back to London, had my own shop in London, had a really big shop in London. And I remember speaking to my area manager
betting
and
shop.
saying, "Yep, betting shops, believe it or not." And I remember said to my manager, "What's next?" Because I'm 20, really early 20s. I've done lots. I'm earning, I'm doing okay for what I'd done. And he said, "Personnel." And I said, "Personnel?"
Was that because you're a woman?
Yeah, how sexist is that? Yeah. And literally, thought, I'm not having this. Went home, looked at the Evening Standard and saw the journalist partnership were recruiting. And back then there was loads of different ways you could join. You could join as a graduate, you could join as an RMT, which started you at base level management and worked your way up. You could join as a section manager trainee. And it's interesting because I was only a year out of university, so I could have joined as a graduate, but I was very much, I'm a year out of university, there'll be those, fresh and hungry people who have just finished. And I've got management experience. Mm-hmm. So rather than going the graduate route, I'm going to join as a TM trainee route because I've got the management experience behind me. And that was how I joined retail. I'd read up about the journalist partnership and again, all those values and the beliefs and stuff. That's what attracted me. I thought there'd be a better sort of organisation. I never looked back since. But that's how I got into. That's basically how I got into retail.
And retail's interesting. I've worked in retail for a little while too, and I think it's one of those industries that is quite a meritocracy, and because everything gets measured. Like, if you can measure it in retail, it gets measured. That's what I was tell people. I was astounded when I started working in retail from a different industry. Literally everything gets measured. Do you think that means that, because it's merit-based, that the element of race and or gender is a less of an issue because so much is metric? It's like being a goal scorer. If you score 10 goals, you scored 10 goals, right? No one can say whether you're, black or brown or whatever, you score 10 goals, right? If you run the most profitable shop or the one that's got the best customer satisfaction or the best waste or the best whatever, that's it, right? And so therefore in that industry, race is less of an impact?
I'd say the world has moved on in retail over the 20 years that I've been in it.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that when I first joined the partnership, I mean, I worked in London, so London is always the most diverse place where you'll find a range of people. But being a black person in management, I was always in the minority.
Yeah.
My friends who were...
Playing a black woman,
yeah,
you were really, really in the minority.
Really in the minority. If I'm honest, I think I was the first black female branch manager ever in the partnership.
Yeah,
I don't know if anyone else before me that has achieved that role. Thank you. I remember being a deputy branch manager in a really large shop in London, and a customer came over, black lady came over and said to me, "Congratulations." And I said, "What for?" Mm. And she said, "It's great to see a black female in a suit." And I was like astounded because and I thought, "Christ, she's right."
Yeah.
Because I forget that I'm black. 100%. I'm just being Sim, leading loads of people.
Yeah.
But customers, I remember I'd be the branch manager and I'd have two white men who were my deputies, and the customer would bypass me and talk to them, and they were brilliant because they'd say, "You might want to speak to Sim because she's actually the branch manager," and the customer would be a bit like, "Oh,
are you sure?
Oh, yeah,
are you sure?"
Sorry. And then was responded really well once, they could see that I was really good. So there is something about I was always the minority, and I think the business then was very male dominated at the very start of my career. So lots of my senior leaders, and to be fair, lots of my brilliant sponsorships came from my white male senior leaders who saw something in me that said, she's got something, we need to help her move on and she can always do more.
Yeah.
And like I say, I don't ever discount the fact that I was really thoughtful about how I self-developed myself. I always sought out more. I always sought out what I could do different. I always asked for feedback, and I always responded to the feedback. Very, very, very infrequently. Only infrequently did I dismiss any feedback that somebody had given me. And if I dismissed feedback I was given, it was more likely because I didn't respect the person who was giving it to me. So I'm all based on relationships. If my relationships are great, I'm going to have absolute respect for you. I'm going to listen to what you have to say, and I'm going to respond and lean into what you've said because I trust and believe in you. But if I had no respect for you and didn't believe in your values and what you did, I dismiss that relationship. Because that would mean nothing to me, and I'd go for the people that was really important to me.
And so that's how, I mean, we can sort of bypass it, but it's quite significant to achieve something like that. And we talked earlier about you juggling all these things in your head, but it sounds to me like you just wanted to work hard and achieve the best you could achieve, and that was what drove you forward, and other people saw that in you.
Yeah.
So we can all sort of say, well, I did this and I had to manage this, but at the end of the day, you had high expectations of yourself and other people, and you worked hard to do it, and you developed yourself in a way that enabled you to do that, listen to feedback when it was right, and that's really had some grit and determination, and that's what helped you achieve what you've achieved.
And I also did things outside the box. Okay. So you can if you wanted to, you could just do your day job. I always did extra. I was chair of governors, for a couple of years. I always thought about what other responsibility can I never just did my job. I guess the thing is, I never ever just did my day job. Yeah. I remember, splitting up with my husband and twinning. So I ran two shops. So I had two sets of teams and two sets of responsibilities to look after. And then not only that, I'd be saying to my boss, I want to do some regional stuff as well. I want to lead on some regional stuff as well. Because what I didn't want anyone to do is say, well, she's now not with her husband and therefore she can't do something being mum to two children. So I always strived to do more than just what I do day to day. That's always been my mantra. I'm never just going to do my job. Yeah. I'm going to do more than. And actually, I work better when my bucket's full,
Yeah.
there when my bucket isn't. When my bucket is full and I've got 3 or 4 big things to think about, I'm so much more strategic. I'm so much more driven in what I'm going to do. I'm so much more deliberate in the conversations that I have and the outcomes I'm trying to achieve or the influence I'm trying to have. And somebody's really going to think really broadly about what it is they're trying to do versus my bucket's half empty. That for me is great at moments when I need a bit of work, potentially a bit of work-life balance of my, something in your health.
Yeah.
But on the whole, there's something about, I think there's something about you've got to, we're all made really differently is the thing. And as an individual, you've got to work out what drives you. What drives me may not drive you. So what is it that's going to drive you? What is it that's center of your core that is really meaningful and really personable to you? And what are some of those things that never go away? Yeah. So if when people reach out to me, regardless of time of day it is, I'll always, most times I'll always respond. And, it's unlikely that someone could send me a message and I wouldn't come back to them at some point. I am, sometimes I could reach out to somebody and they wouldn't come back to me. And I just think, how is that even possible? I get you may be really busy in the moment, but how is it not possible that across your week or your 2 weeks, you haven't just gone back and sense checked that people who have reached out to you for whatever reason have responded to you? And there's something in that, what is it you want to stand for? What is it you want to believe in? How do you want to make people feel? All of that adds to who you are as a person. Yeah. And makes you a bit distinctive, a little bit different.
So, one of my favourite sayings is, hard work will always beat talent if talent doesn't work hard, right? Actually, you've got hard work and talent, which is really important. The other thing that we talk about a lot is resilience. Yeah. So, you can have all of that, but if you're not, I think everyone has a level of resilience, how much they access it, but we can go into it another time. But how about, it's always, when we talk about careers, it's really easy to draw them as a straight line, but they hardly ever are, right? And so can you tell me a little about any setbacks you've had along that journey?
Yeah, I think so. Not many, but a couple. So what I would say is never presume a job is yours and never presume a job is someone else's. So I remember when I was, I've done lots of roles in secondment, okay? And there's been a couple.
Why?
Sometimes people move on to cover other secondments, so it leaves a backfill, so you've got an opportunity to go and do something different.
Because you look for them, is what I mean, or because they just happen.
Sometimes they come up. Sometimes they come up, and somebody's got something, and it's not a permanent. There's a lot. Sometimes, in order to drive your career, you may want to step your toe into do something else in a different environment, different region, for example. And so I have done lots of roles on secondment where they weren't mine permanently, but I always set out to do them as if I was there permanently. Yeah. And then when the permanent job comes up, I've at times have thought, well, I think so and so's in the line. Yeah. So I reckon it's their job, but I think they'll get it, but they'll stay where they are because that job's bigger. And then I think I'll get on secondment. Right. And at those moments, I failed to do which I should always do, which is give my prep my all. When I go for a job interview, I don't take it lightly. I am really thoughtful around the STAR technique, using my best evidence, giving my best foot forward, and really giving that person little room to maneuver to tell me why I can't do that job I've gone for. Because I need to apply. I'm not a random applier. It takes a lot of energy to apply for a job. Yeah. I only apply for jobs that I think I really want to do and I could really grow from or really learn from. But I'm going to show you all the things I'm going to be able to offer that job. Yeah. My setbacks occurred when I presumed that's someone else's job, and I'm just going to get it as a random. Didn't put much effort in, and neither of us got the job. Right. So the person that I thought was going to get the job didn't get it. I occasionally get the backfill because someone else completely bamboozled us and they got the job. And I thought, that's a lesson to me. Never do that again. And the only setback was I didn't get the permanent job sooner than I'd wanted. Yeah. That was it. I don't think it damaged my career, but what it did was it made me learn not to presume, and that you never really know who else is in the running. Yeah. Is what I'd say. And if I'm honest, do I think I've ever had any other setbacks? Really honestly, not that I can really point to say, that was a real downfall. I remember there was a time very early on when my branch manager asked me to apply for a different role within the store. It wasn't a role I really wanted, but because he'd asked me to apply, I'd applied. And then again, somebody else brilliant who really well suited for the role applied, and that person got the role. And I remember being in such a strop with him because he told me to apply for a role, but I didn't even want in the first place, and kind of got my hopes up. But again, what that again for as personal development lesson was, even if someone says, "I'd love you to come and work for me and apply for this role," you've still got to A, really want the role, and B, you've got to go at it and really put your evidence in to be really tangible about outcomes. Because if I'd really wanted that job, I would have shown up to that interview, given really great outcomes, and probably got the job.
Yeah.
Didn't really want it. I was only doing it because he asked me to do it. But I was so annoyed that he put me through all that rigmarole, and I didn't get it anyway.
Yeah.
So they're not. I wouldn't say I don't really see things as setbacks. I see things as a bit of a learning lesson, and actually, I'm going to incorporate that in what I do going forward.
Yeah.
Is the way I see life. And I have a view, I'm a bit like what you said before, there is no one straight road in life to your career, what you want to do.
No.
I absolutely think, I regularly say to people, because I do lots of mentoring, and people sometimes talk to me about their aspiration, where they want to get to. And I'm like, that's brilliant. But what are you going to learn along the way? How do you fill your toolbox is what I talk about. I feel like I've got a toolbox of different examples and different evidence, work-related things outside of work, things in life that I can draw upon to say, this is why I'm a great fit for this. And that involves some life skills in there as well. And it involves a bit of personality and a bit of, Sim brand in there as well. But that's made me who I am today. So I'd really encourage people not to think there's one journey to get to where you want to get to. And even if you really want to get there, there's nothing wrong with trying different things along the way to still get you to where you want to get to.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that actually makes you even better than having a bit of a linear route to one place. And there is no one linear route. Try everything that comes your way. Sometimes do those things where you just think it's not really for me. Give it a go. You'll be surprised at what you learn and what you grow, and learn from that. That can definitely take you in a different vein.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, the thing that there's the old adage, fail to prepare to fail.
Yeah.
So bring it back to race for the last part of what we're going to talk about. So a few questions. First of all, you worked in retail as a meritocracy, but has race ever been an issue for you in your career? I know that could be difficult because you've worked at John Lewis all this time. And if not, do you think it's an issue for other people?
My race has definitely been an issue for me. And when I say it's been an issue for me, it's been more about the way in which people have treated me.
Yeah. So
a bit of couple of elements in there. So there's one thing, it's the customer element.
Yeah.
So our customer demographic is changing now. But I think historically I've come up against customers who didn't want to face into me because they couldn't quite believe that I was whatever role I was at that point in time, is the first thing.
Yeah.
And then the second thing was I remember leading teams of people who were from an ethnic background, who some individuals did not treat me as well as my white counterparts.
Right.
And when
in the organisation,
direct reports, actually not even direct report. I line managed somebody, they line managed this individual, and this individual continually treated me like something they stepped on for some unknown reason. And
So junior to you?
Yep.
Okay.
Junior to me. Male.
Okay.
So I remember saying to my direct report, something's going on here. Can you look into this for me? Because I don't understand what's going on. Here's what I'm noticing. It got to the point where I had to sit down with that individual and have a really honest conversation around, I just need to share with you how you behave towards me. Here are the tangible actions that I'm noticing. Here's where my line is. If you continue to treat me in this manner, I'll be forced to take formal action because this is not what I come to work for. If I have done something to you that you believe is unfair, or I've treated you in a way that you don't like, I'm open to a discussion, but I'm not here for this, and I won't tolerate this any longer. And I'm happy to give you some time to think about it. That's happened to me twice, in two different shops. Both times, they've come back and said, apologised, and reflected how they treated me. It was less about me and more about previous managers in the role that I was doing, and they had carried that legacy bit over. And actually, now they've got to know me for the 3 months, they can see that I'm actually really credible, really capable, and actually a really good people manager that they never expected me to be.
So that was to do with seniority, not race?
It was to do with a little bit of both, actually, if I'm really honest. A little bit of both. Don't forget, I'm in the minority already.
Yeah, that's true.
So you wouldn't
Could have been gender as well. Yes,
I think that was thrown in. I think that's probably higher on the agenda than the race bit.
In the hierarchy.
The hierarchy
in
of
the
everything.
hierarchy of all of this.
I think the gender bit was higher. and this is the problem, see, because I'm naturally in the minority. It can be difficult to pinpoint exactly the bit of me that you're taking offence with.
Yeah,
That's the reason why you're behaving in this particular way. Yeah, it's really interesting, that, isn't it, actually?
Yeah, like super interesting, right?
Yeah.
And you bring out intersectionality, you know, whether it's you're female or you're black or you're a mum or whatever. These are all issues for various different people.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that's the case, and we believe it's the case, and organisations can be a bit like that. How do you think we address these issues? I mean, it's really interesting because one of the things I've found in retail is it's so huge.
Yeah.
You know, the volume of people, and you know, I was at Sainsbury's, 160,000 people, and you know, it's just so huge.
Yeah.
But that also means it's a really great petri dish for how things can be changed and be different. So, you know, whether it's we're talking about race, but it could be gender. How do you think we address these issues of bias against underrepresented groups?
I think it's such a tough one because of the volume of people involved, you know, in the organisation. And I think it starts with the organisation being really clear about what it wants to go after. You know, there is no organisation who is unaware of whatever issues it is, you know, from a D&I perspective that they want to tackle. And if it is race, if you feel that at, for example, particular levels, there isn't enough representation from an ethnic minority background, if that is the case, if that is a big enough issue for you that you want to do something about it, then you'll be forced to face into it. I think
the organisation,
because what I see happen is you get people within the organisation who are really passionate about a topic, who are really passionate about a potential barrier that they're trying to overcome and overface. It can be really difficult when you're personally impacted to make the change because it's that emotional bit that I talked about earlier on around your people. It's very difficult for people to take you seriously when you become emotional. Yeah. So you have to try to remain unemotional about it, and it's quite difficult when it's about you.
Yeah.
But if you're really serious about, for example, you want to change or you want to increase ethnic diversity at senior levels, then what steps are you taking to enable ethnic minority people to get through this system to be in the room, and secondly, when they're in the room, how do you make them feel, and how do you include them, and what are you doing to make them feel that once they're in the room, they really want to be in the room and stay in the room?
Yeah.
Because coming from somebody who is regularly a minority in the room, it's hard work. Yeah. Being the minority in the room and having to, you know, take a deep breath and think really carefully of what it is you're going to say and how you're going to say it, and show up well to negate any potential biases that you may come up against. It's already hard work. But the challenge is that unless you're an ethnic minority, you won't really know what that feels like. Yeah. And unless you have a really great relationship with an ethnic minority, he will tell you the truth about how it feels to be in those circles that for people that you won't see it from because you're not like that. You're going to have to really open your eyes, listen to what someone has to say and see it for yourself and face into that in order for that person to feel really included when you're in the room. But it's a big ask of people when they're really busy, when there's so much to do, and there's a real strive, isn't there? You know, real strive in the economy at the moment to control every penny. It's a big ask. So there's something about things only change when seniority really want things to change, and are prepared to put their money where their mouth is. Yeah. Otherwise, you've got to be really careful because you can only do so much at particular levels. And what you don't want to do is lose really passionate people who become disengaged because there's no barrier. But I think there's a bit of honesty as well around what it is you intend to do and why. Yeah. You know, where's the commercial benefit by having people of difference in the right rooms making those real senior, you know, real strategic decisions. Yeah.
So there's an onus on the organisation to want and believe that having a diverse team is beneficial to them. Tick, right? I get that, and that's probably the most important thing. But there's also must be an onus on the individuals to drive themselves through the system, right? I've managed to do it. You've managed to do it, and I've done this podcast where I speak to many people who've managed to do it. So, what's the advice you would then give to people who think that they might be able to want to take it on, want to drive? You know, we know organisations need to change. Some will, some won't, right? But people do make it to the top. So, what advice would you give an aspiring young person of colour starting on that journey?
So what I would say is I've made it to a degree within my organisation. There's still higher I could go and higher that I'd love to go, right? Is the first thing. Secondly, what I would say to anybody who wants to progress their career, there's something about networking and building the right relationships with the right people who can speak up on your behalf. I really believe sponsorship goes a long way. You know, you're not in the rooms if and when talent management pipeline conversations happen. And what you want to be able to do is be on enough people's radar so that when opportunities come up, even for those common opportunities that gets you in the door, gets you in a different room under different people, you want to be on the list where someone says, actually, I think they're pretty good. They're really great at these skills. Actually, they could do with an opportunity to really leverage these skills over here. And actually, they're a really nice person. They come across really well. I think they're going to fit in really well with the team. I think they're going to bring a bit of difference. You know, they're not afraid to speak up, but they do it in a way that's really positively enabling. Not no one wants a distractor, let's be honest. And we've all got distractors on the team. Nobody wants a detractor. But actually, they do it in a way that makes us think really differently, really collaboratively. But I'd really encourage people to reach out and reach up and really get those mentors and that sponsorship from their senior leaders who don't necessarily look like them. Because loads of people come to me all the time and I say to them, no, I don't want to mentor you, but I don't think I'm the person that you need to be connected with. So let's have a chat about the people who I think can really open the doors for you to unlock your career, because I don't think it's me. But there is something about really knowing who within your reach is the unlocker to getting you into those rooms and into them spaces and being a voice. You know, I really want people. I'm very clear when I take a look for someone, you know, a sponsorship. I'm really clear about I need you to be the voice of me. There is only so much I can do. What I need you to do is the people who I don't know very well, with the people I'm not connected in with me, either get me an intro with them, please, and then I can do it myself, build that myself, because I can build a great relationship with people who I've got some time with, or I need you in the rooms, in those spaces, vying for me on my behalf, because what's got me here is I know that I had people in a room who said she's in that box and she's ready. I've still got to go to interview. I've still got to bring my evidence and I've still got to show up well and deliver, but I'm in the box. I'm in the box. People are talking about me and saying she's next, she's ready, she can do it, even when I haven't always got those jobs.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. We talk about networking or navigating organisations, and I think whoever you are, that's important, regardless, right? But for underrepresented groups, it's like double, triple,
it is.
Right?
Yeah.
Knowing that, and if you can unlock that and understand what I call the game, right? If you can unlock that, then you can go a long way.
You can.
Right?
Yeah.
Because organisations that may or may not be institutional racism, but the individuals, lots of them aren't, right? And
correct.
so actually, if you can find and navigate your way through, you can make it.
Yeah.
You can definitely make it. Okay, so last thing. Often when we talk about what's it like and for being a person of colour trying to get through an organisation, it can always feel a bit, this is so difficult, it's really down. Although I think you've been very positive about that in terms of the networking answer. So I always ask all my guests towards the end of what we're saying is, you know, things have got to change. I feel they need to change. What reasons have we got to be hopeful that actually this movement is coming, change is happening, and we'll see lots more people of colour in significantly senior roles in 10 or 15 years' time? Why should we be hopeful?
I would say we should be hopeful because the generation of people coming behind us are mentally in a much different place than what we were when we were going through our careers.
Right.
You know, I think that kind of, you know, the younger generation these days are very much more agile and really driven around where they can be and what they could do versus what I was when I was growing up. And, you know, my children, for example, behind them. So I think generationally, people's mindset is very different in terms of opportunities that are out there. I also think the world is changing. And I think the opportunities that we have afforded to others has enabled them to think far more broadly than we ever have done in the future. And I also think from a really commercial benefit, actually, where the money sits is equally moving now, equally moving around as well, which means people have greater access into things they've never had access to before. You know, I was looking at content creation over the weekend and saying to my sister...
On TikTok?
Yes, saying to my sister, oh my God, look at this person, how many followers they've got. And oh my God, who are they and what are they doing? How are they earning so much money? And then we kind of looked at my son and said, you want to get into this? That's where the money is.
Yeah. Accounting, forget that. Dancing on TikTok, that's what you've got to be doing.
But that was never around when we were growing up, and that wasn't a source of income, and that wasn't a way to make money. Whereas I think the opportunities to be creative and to be on TV and to do different and to be role modeling is far more reachable than it ever has been before. And so there will be less reliance on some of the things that I grew up in that way of world, in terms of that, you know, you needed a person to do it. There's going to be less of that. And so some of that unique stuff that people are just getting into now, I think will make it far easier. You know, we're always going to need bricks and mortar, and we're always going to need people. But there's something around what we need people to do, I think, will feel very different. And therefore, I just think it's going to be a lot more easier and accessible for people from a minority ethnic background to break into, because it won't matter as much. And there are more people now setting a bit of a role model trend than there ever was, like I say, from our generations.
So, oh, bless you for putting me in with you. So basically, the people are changing, the youth are changing, and how they think about it. Organisations are changing and realising that they need to be different.
And if they're not changing, they have no choice but to.
Correct. And effectively, the rules are changing. Yeah. Right. So as you said, the gatekeepers and how you access things is completely changing. So we've got this what you're sort of saying, we've got this sort of melting pot of change that hopefully will allow the change to happen, which has not been the case for 100 years. No. And so I think I agree, and I think that is a great reason for us to think that things will be different. Look, thank you, Sim.
You're very welcome.
That was a really interesting and inspirational and wide-reaching conversation. Your career, your upbringing in your career has been so interesting to tap into. It's great, and I'm sure lots of people will be inspired by what they've heard. Congratulations on what you've achieved, and seeing as you've said it yourself, you've got so much more to achieve. I shall be keeping my eyes peeled on where you go, because I'm sure you'll go as far as you can imagine is possible. So thank you. Thanks for coming in. I appreciate it, and I've very much enjoyed it.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Okay, no problem.